These houses have no families. The breakfast on the table is real. So are the canned peaches, the bedroom curtains, the television, and the car in the drive. But the people are mannequins. It is May 5, 1955, at the Nevada test site. A nuclear weapon called Apple II is waiting on a tower about 2 miles away. The government built this little American town to answer a practical question: what survives an atomic blast? Civil defense crews stock the rooms while cameras face the windows. Then the desert turns white. The first house bends and tears apart. The next one holds for a moment before fire moves through its rooms. Food jars burst. Curtains whip toward broken windows. Mannequins land under walls and furniture. This looks like a warning. It was also a sales demonstration. The program was called Operation Q. It tested buildings and emergency crews, but it also showed the public that nuclear danger could be measured, prepared for, and managed. The blast was real. So were many of the safety lessons. The dangerous part was the boundary the cameras could not see. 5 years earlier, President Truman created the Federal Civil Defense Administration to coordinate training, public information, and preparation for attack. Its films, drills, shelter plans, and radio instructions entered classrooms and living rooms. At the same time, the Atomic Energy Commission was preparing to test nuclear weapons in Nevada. Before the first test, the commission sent a notice to nearby communities. It said monitoring teams and patrols would protect the public. Then came the sentence that mattered most. Health and safety authorities expected no danger outside the test site limits. That reassurance had a specific date and a specific boundary. It did not say radiation was harmless everywhere, but it gave the public a clean picture. Danger belonged inside the range. Normal life continued outside it. The Civil Defense Campaign made a second promise. If an enemy bomb ever arrived, ordinary people would not be helpless. Those two ideas worked together. The government could contain the tests, and families could manage the attack. Subscribe to Archive and keep digging. In 1951, a cartoon turtle named Bert pulled into his gel while a firecracker exploded above him. The lesson was simple: duck and cover. School children practiced getting under desks, turning away from windows, and covering exposed skin. On the street, they were told to use a wall, a curb, or anything that offered protection. Millions saw the film. It is easy now to treat the drill as a cruel joke that misses part of the truth. At some distances, getting low and covering exposed skin could reduce injuries from heat, broken glass, and flying debris. It could not make a child near the center of a large nuclear explosion safe. The film did not explain every distance, weapon, wind, or dose. It turned an impossible subject into one action a child could remember. That was the campaign's great skill. It took a danger too large to picture and divided it into small jobs. Get down, find shelter, store water, keep a radio, wait for instructions. By the end of the lesson, fear had become a checklist. Nevada's first nuclear test, Shot Able, exploded on January 27, 1951. The site would eventually host 100 atmospheric tests and 828 underground tests through 1992. In the early years, the most visible tests happened above ground. The flash could be seen from Las Vegas. Hotels advertised viewing parties. Newspapers printed photographs of rising clouds. Officials did not simply ignore safety. They tracked weather, monitored radiation, placed instruments, issued notices, and sometimes changed plans. That matters because the story is not that nobody knew fallout existed. The problem was confidence. The public boundary sounded firm while the material released by the explosions moved through air, soil, water, animals, and food. A fence could mark where the government controlled access. It could not tell a radioactive particle where to land. Operation Q was the clearest version of the campaign because it joined science, emergency planning, news coverage, and theater in one place. For the Apple II shot, workers built houses at different distances. They installed utilities, parked cars, arranged furniture, stocked food, and dressed mannequins. Civil defense projects tested shelters, clothing, electrical systems, supplies, and rescue work. Reporters watched. Television carried the event into homes. The blast gave the cameras a perfect before and after. A painted house becomes wreckage. A room that looks ordinary fills with splinters. A mannequin placed beside a window is thrown across the floor. Farther away, another building remains standing. The surviving building suggested that construction, distance, and preparation changed the outcome. They did. But the demonstration favored damage a camera could record in seconds: heat, pressure, fire, broken glass, collapsed walls. Fallout behaved differently. It could arrive later. It could be invisible. It could travel in a direction no camera had framed. It could enter a body without knocking down a house. Operation Q showed what the bomb did to a model town. It could not build a model of every town the cloud might reach. Atmospheric explosions pulled soil and debris into the cloud. Radioactive material returned to the ground downwind, sometimes close to the site and sometimes much farther away. National Cancer Institute research later reconstructed fallout across much of the continental United States. That does not mean every place received the same material or the same dose. Weather, the test, distance, diet, and age all changed the exposure. It means the reassuring boundary was not a physical boundary for fallout. Monitoring also had limits. Instruments could measure selected places at selected times. A result inside a guideline could sound like proof that everyone outside the range was safe, but a regional average could not describe every ranch, water tank, garden, or glass of milk. The most important path began on pasture. Radioactive iodine settled on grass or animal feed. Cows and goats ate it. The iodine moved into their milk. Families drank the milk before the isotope had time to decay, and a child's thyroid was especially good at collecting iodine. The thyroid is a small gland in the neck. It uses iodine to make hormones, and it cannot tell stable iodine from radioactive iodine-131. After contaminated milk is swallowed, some iodine-131 can collect in the thyroid and expose the tissue from inside the body. Children mattered most for two reasons. Their thyroids were smaller and more sensitive, and many drank fresh local milk. There is no collapsing wall in this process. The pasture, cow, and milk all look normal. Public attention stayed with easier images: a standing house, a stock shelter, a child under a desk. The later evidence changed the scale of the picture. Fallout from Nevada did not stop at Nevada. It was detected and reconstructed thousands of miles away. That finding does not let us assign every later thyroid illness to one test. It does destroy the simple idea that risk ended at the fence. Radiation can cause cancer. Childhood exposure to iodine-131 increases the risk of thyroid disease and thyroid cancer. The harder question is how many illnesses resulted from Nevada testing. Researchers have estimated doses and compared disease rates. The answers depend on incomplete records, uncertain diets, and models built decades after the exposure. Some studies found increased thyroid abnormalities and evidence of increased cancer risk. Revisions to dose estimates change parts of the picture. There is no honest reason to turn that uncertainty into a dramatic, exact death count. Uncertainty is not the same as safety. The government had told communities that no danger was expected beyond the range. Later research showed a real exposure pathway and a real increase in risk, especially for children. The responsible conclusion is narrower than a slogan and more serious than the original assurance. The fallout crossed the boundary. People were exposed without choosing it. Some of that exposure could cause disease. The exact total remains disputed. For decades, downwind families argued that the tests had entered their bodies and that official reassurance had left them unprepared. In 1990, Congress passed the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. Its findings recognized that fallout from atmospheric tests exposed people living downwind in parts of Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. The law created a compensation system for eligible downwinders, uranium workers, and test participants with specified diseases. It was not a court verdict for every illness. Applicants still had to meet rules for location, dates, work, and disease, but the change in language was enormous. In 1951, the public notice said no danger was expected outside the limits. In 1990, federal law acknowledged exposure and excess cancers among people beyond those limits. The fence had not moved. The government's description of what crossed it had. None of this means every civil defense instruction was fake. Distance matters in an explosion. Shielding matters. A basement can reduce fallout exposure. Stored water and sealed food can prevent people from swallowing contaminated material. A radio can tell a family when to remain inside and when to leave. The problem comes when useful advice carries a larger conclusion it cannot support. Every drill gave danger a procedure. Every stocked shelter suggested the future could be planned. Every model house still standing after Apple II suggested a way through. Fallout was the part that refused to stay inside that picture. In 1963, the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom signed the Limited Test Ban Treaty. It prohibited nuclear tests in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. Underground testing continued. The treaty reduced open-air fallout, but it did not end weapons development or erase contamination at the Nevada site. The United States kept testing underground for nearly 3 more decades. By then, the public image of the atomic age had changed. The bright flash over Nevada no longer looked like a harmless spectacle. Fallout had become part of the language of protest, science, diplomacy, and public health. The old films remained. They show classrooms moving under desks, families selecting basement corners, and model homes waiting in the desert. They are valuable because they record more than propaganda. They record a government trying to teach practical survival while asking the public to trust boundaries that radiation did not respect. Return to the notice sent before the first Nevada test. Ultima Laudation. It promises monitoring. That was real. It promises patrols and precautions. Those were real too. Then it says no danger is expected outside the test site. Limits. That sentence is the whole campaign in miniature. It takes a moving, invisible risk and pins it to a line on a map. 4 years later, Operation Q did something similar with a row of houses. One collapses, one burns, one remains standing. The camera gives danger a shape and a distance, but the most important journey begins after the flash. Material rises with the cloud. Wind carries it beyond the frame. Iodine settles on pasture. A cow eats. A child drinks. Nothing in that chain looks like the end of the world. That is why the campaign was convincing. It showed the damage people could see and gave them steps that sometimes helped. What it could not show cleanly was the risk that arrived later, crossed the official boundary, and disappeared into ordinary life. The houses at Operation Q were built to reveal what a nuclear weapon could do. The empty places between those houses told the more difficult story. If you like this video, please subscribe. There are many more old ads people once trusted, and many more stories worth remembering.